The late afternoon sun cast golden streaks across the quiet suburban neighborhood, the kind of place where people believed danger could never find its way in. Rows of maple trees swayed lightly in the breeze, their leaves whispering secrets that only the wind seemed to hear. The bell at Brookfield Elementary had rung just moments earlier, and the air buzzed with the laughter of children. Parents waited at the school gates, waving to their sons and daughters who came skipping out with backpacks bouncing against their shoulders. Teachers stood nearby, ushering stragglers toward waiting cars and buses. It was, by all appearances, an ordinary day. Officer Daniels had parked his patrol SUV at the corner of the block, leaning casually against the hood. Beside him sat Rex, his K-9 partner, a German shepherd whose glossy black and tan coat gleamed in the fading light. Rex's tongue lolled out, his tail thumping lightly against the bumper as a group of kids waved at him. The dog's reputation in the community was unmatched. Children adored him, parents trusted him, and Daniels relied on him with a loyalty that only years of shared work could build. "Can I pet him, Officer Daniels?" one little boy asked, inching forward with his mother's permission. "Sure," Daniels said with a warm smile. "Just hold your hand out slow. He knows you." The boy extended a cautious hand, and Rex, ever the gentle giant when off duty, sniffed before nudging his nose forward, accepting the attention. The boy giggled, patting Rex's head before running back to his mother. Daniels watched with quiet pride. These were the moments he loved, when law enforcement wasn't about chasing criminals, but about showing the community that safety had a face, and sometimes four paws. Daniels' bond with Rex had begun 3 years earlier, when Rex was still in training. The K-9 had stood out for his sharp instincts and unwavering focus. He wasn't the biggest dog in the unit, but his presence commanded respect. Daniels had quickly learned that Rex had a sense for things that couldn't be explained in word shifts in body language. Nervous tics, the kind of subtle cues most humans overlooked. Still, this was supposed to be a calm patrol. School dismissals were usually routine, a chance for Daniels to walk the grounds, wave at families, and make sure traffic moved safely. The worst problem he usually faced here was a double-parked car or a late-running parent. Crime didn't visit neighborhoods like this, or so everyone believed. As Daniels adjusted his cap and leaned against the SUV, his eyes swept the crowd. Parents clustered in small groups, chatting about weekend plans. Teachers carried stacks of papers tucked under their arms. A girl dropped her lunchbox, and Rex's ears perked as the metallic clang echoed against the sidewalk. He tilted his head, but quickly relaxed when Daniels gave a reassuring pat. Everything seemed peaceful, almost too peaceful. A kind of calm that lulled people into thinking nothing could ever go wrong. But Daniels knew better. He had worked long enough in law enforcement to recognize that danger often crept in during moments of comfort. He didn't know it yet, but this was one of those moments. The calm before a storm that would shake the entire community. Rex shifted suddenly, his ears twitching. His golden brown eyes scanned the crowd with a sharpness that Daniels noticed immediately. To anyone else, Rex appeared calm, but Daniels had learned to read his partner's subtle changes. A slight lift of the head, a low breath through the nose, muscles tensing ever so slightly beneath his fur. Rex was alert to something. "Easy, boy," Daniels murmured, running a hand down the dog's back. "It's just kids and parents." But Rex didn't relax. His gaze locked beyond the gates, toward the sidewalk that led to the main road. Daniels followed his line of sight, but saw nothing unusual. At first, just another parent approaching, backpack slung over one shoulder. The man walked casually, his steps unhurried, his expression neutral. Nothing about him screamed danger, yet Rex didn't see what humans saw. He sensed something deeper, something hidden beneath appearances. Daniels brushed off the thought, reminding himself that patrol days like this were meant to be light. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling that his partner's instincts were rarely wrong. For now, though, the officer let the calm of the scene wash over him. The setting sun painted the sky in hues of pink and orange. The sound of car doors slamming and children chattering blended into a soundtrack of ordinary suburban life. It was a picture of safety. Families believed their children were untouchable in this little pocket of the world. Yet standing at the edge of the schoolyard was a silent guardian whose instincts whispered otherwise. Rex's body stiffened, his attention narrowing, though no one but Daniels noticed. The moment stretched, and Daniels glanced at his watch, expecting the shift to end quietly. Just another line in the routine logbook. He had no idea that within minutes, Rex's instincts would rip through the illusion of safety, exposing a darkness no one wanted to believe could exist so close to home. For now, though, parents laughed, children ran, and the world spun with the illusion of peace. Only Rex knew that this calm was not an ending, but the fragile beginning of something far more dangerous. The sidewalk leading toward Brookfield Elementary was usually filled with familiar faces, mothers clutching toddlers, fathers waving car keys, grandparents waiting patiently with gentle smiles. But that afternoon, one man stood out, though not in any way obvious to the parents chatting near the gates. To most, he looked ordinary. He wore a faded jacket zipped up to his neck, a baseball cap pulled low over his brow, and carried a dark backpack slung tightly against his shoulders. No one paid him much attention. After all, people came and went around schools every day. A late uncle, a cousin, an older sibling. There were always faces teachers didn't immediately recognize. But Rex noticed. The K9 froze, muscles locking in place, tail stiffening as his eyes narrowed on the figure. A deep rumble started in his chest, low enough that only Officer Daniels, standing right beside him, could hear it. Daniels followed Rex's gaze, eyebrows tightening as he spotted the man weaving casually through the thinning crowd, heading straight for the school entrance. Daniels studied him carefully. At first glance, nothing seemed amiss. The man's stride was relaxed, his head slightly bowed as if avoiding attention. But something about his body language struck Daniels as odd. He wasn't smiling, wasn't waving at anyone, wasn't scanning for a child who might run into his arms. He walked with too much purpose, his focus locked on the gates, not on the people. Then Rex's growl deepened, loud enough this time for a nearby parent to glance nervously at the dog. Daniels tugged gently at the leash. "Easy, boy," he murmured. But Rex wasn't calming down. His ears pressed forward, teeth flashing as the growl grew sharper. Cutting through the afternoon chatter, the man stopped just a few feet away. "I'm here for my niece," he said flatly, his voice low, clipped and oddly strained, as if rehearsed. Daniels gave him a polite nod. "Which student?" The man shifted, eyes flickering quickly over the children streaming past the gate. Her name's Emily. She's in 2nd grade." A woman nearby turned at the mention of the name, eyebrows raised. "Emily? Which Emily?" "My daughter's in 2nd grade, too." The man didn't answer her directly. Instead, he pulled his bag tighter against his chest and took another step toward the gates. That was the exact moment Rex lunged forward, snarling, teeth bared, forcing the man to halt. The dog's hackles stood like bristles, his entire body radiating aggression. Gasps erupted around them. Children shrieked in surprise, some clinging to their parents. "Hey, call him off." The man snapped, his tone suddenly sharp, defensive. "I told you, I'm just here for my niece." Daniels kept his hand firm on Rex's harness. The K9's reaction wasn't ordinary. Rex had been trained to differentiate between harmless strangers and true threats. For him to respond with this much intensity meant something was very wrong. "All right," Daniels said slowly, voice calm but authoritative. "Her full name, sir." "Which teacher's class is she in?" The man's jaw tightened. He hesitated, then muttered, "Emily Johnson, Mrs. Taylor's class." Daniel's eyes narrowed. He knew for a fact there was no Emily Johnson in Mrs. Taylor's class. His daughter had been in that very class the year before. The man was lying. Still, Daniels pressed on. "Got some ID?" "Parent pickup usually requires it." "I'm running late," the man snapped, shifting uncomfortably. "She's waiting for me." "Just let me through." He tried to step forward again, but Rex leapt sideways, blocking the path completely. His teeth glistened in the sunlight, his growls drawing more attention from parents who were now whispering nervously, sensing the unease. "Why is the dog acting like that?" One mother whispered, clutching her child's hand. "Something's wrong," another muttered, edging backward. The stranger's composure began to crack. His eyes darted left and right, scanning the crowd, calculating. Sweat beaded along his hairline, trickling down his temple despite the cool breeze. His grip on the backpack tightened, fingers twitching as though he feared someone might rip it away. Daniel's instincts screamed at him to act, but years of protocol pressed down on his shoulders. What if this was just an overreaction? What if Rex was wrong? The department prided itself on community. Trust accusing a parent in front of the entire school could backfire in ways he'd never live down. But then he looked at Rex. The dog wasn't barking wildly or lunging without reason. His stance was firm, calculated, purposeful. This wasn't random aggression. This was a warning. Daniels took a step forward, placing himself between the man and the gate. "Sir, I'll need to see inside your bag." That request snapped the last thread of patience. The man's expression hardened, his voice rising. "This is ridiculous. I don't need to show you anything. You think I'd carry something dangerous into a school?" Gasps rippled again through the watching crowd. A teacher quickly ushered several children back inside the building. Daniels kept his hand steady on his holster, not drawing his weapon yet, but ready if needed. "It's a simple check," Daniels said firmly. "If you've got nothing to hide, it won't take more than a minute." For the first time, real panic flickered in the man's eyes. He stepped backward, clutching his bag closer, his gaze darting toward the open street dot, and then Rex surged forward with a ferocity that jolted everyone. The leash strained, muscles rippling as the canine lunged, teeth snapping dangerously close to the man's hand. Daniels yanked him back, but the message was clear. Rex wasn't letting this stranger pass. Not now. Not ever. The air around the schoolyard changed. The chatter had gone silent. Parents exchanged worried looks. Children whispered anxiously, sensing that something far more serious was happening than anyone had expected. Daniels felt the decision crystallize in his chest. Trust Rex. Trust the dog who had never failed him, the partner who had pulled him through drug busts, armed chases, and dangerous raids. He tightened his grip on the leash, squared his shoulders, and met the stranger's eyes. "Sir," Daniel said, voice cutting through the tense silence, "you're not going anywhere until I see what's in that bag." The air outside Brookfield Elementary had shifted. Moments earlier, laughter, car horns, and the squeals of children had filled the atmosphere with warmth. Now, silence pressed heavily against the crowd. Parents stood frozen, clutching their children as if an invisible shadow had suddenly stretched across the sunny afternoon dot at the center of it all. Officer Daniels faced the stranger. His hand rested near his holster, though he hadn't drawn his weapon. Years of training told him escalation could trigger disaster, but every instinct screamed danger. Beside him, Rex remained taut and coiled, hackles raised, eyes locked on the man with the backpack. The German shepherd wasn't simply agitated, he was warring. The stranger's demeanor faltered. His jaw tightened, and his shifting eyes betrayed nervousness. Daniels caught it instantly. Innocent people, even under pressure, rarely looked like prey searching for an escape route. This man wasn't just uncomfortable, he was calculating. "Sir," Daniels repeated firmly, his voice steady, but sharp enough to carry through the crowd. "You need to show me what's in the bag. Now." Murmurs rippled among the parents. A few began ushering their children toward cars. One mother whispered, "Something's wrong with him," while another clutched her phone, already dialing 911 despite the officer's presence. The man adjusted his grip on the backpack, his knuckles white against the strap. "I told you," he snapped. "I'm just here for my niece. You've got no right to harass me in front of all these people." Daniels didn't move, but his voice carried authority, sharpened over years on the job. "If you've got nothing to hide, this will be over in seconds. But if you don't comply, I'll have to detain you." The man's face twisted with frustration. His nostrils flared, sweat trickling down from beneath his cap. He took half a step forward, then froze when Rex snarled, lunging just enough to snap teeth inches from his thigh. Gasps broke out again, and children began crying. "Control that animal!" The man barked, though his voice cracked under the strain. Daniels held steady, eyes narrowing. He'd seen this before the dance between guilt and desperation. Suspects who knew the walls were closing in often lashed out, clinging to denial until it snapped under pressure. The stranger wasn't merely defensive. He was terrified. "Answer me this," Daniels said, keeping his voice calm. "What's your niece's teacher's name again?" The man hesitated, then muttered, "Taylor." "Mrs. Taylor?" Daniels felt the hairs on his neck rise. He had already caught the inconsistency earlier, but pressing the point would test the man's story. "Funny," Daniels said, lowering his tone so only those closest could hear. "There is no Emily Johnson in Mrs. Taylor's class." The man's eyes widened briefly before narrowing again, his jaw clenching in anger. "You don't know every kid in this school." Daniels leaned forward slightly, his words measured. "I know enough." The crowd thickened, parents torn between leaving and staying to see what unfolded. The tension was palpable, every second stretching like a drawn-out note. One father spoke up nervously. "Officer, maybe it's just a misunderstanding?" But Daniels didn't waver. Misunderstandings didn't make Rex bristle like a predator before a strike. The man's patience finally cracked. "This is ridiculous. I'm not standing here being treated like a criminal." His voice boomed across the yard, startling several children who began to cry louder. He tried to push past Daniels, but Rex lunged again, dragging Daniels half a step forward as the leash strained to its limit. The sound of the snarl was primal, feral a warning carved into every fiber of the dog's being. Daniels yanked Rex back, but the message was clear. His canine partner wasn't budging. "Back up," Daniels commanded sharply, planting his free hand against the man's chest. "You're not going anywhere until this is resolved." The man stumbled backward, rage flashing across his face. His hands twitched against the straps of the backpack. Daniels' eyes locked onto it. What was in there? The thought pulsed in his mind like a drumbeat. Every movement the stranger made seemed wrong, too guarded, too careful. His shoulders hunched protectively over the bag, his steps angled not toward any waiting child, but toward the open street. If he bolted, Daniels knew the chase would erupt in chaos, and with dozens of children still nearby, chaos could turn deadly. He needed to control the situation. "Parents," Daniels called out, raising his voice without breaking eye contact with the man. "Please step back. Move your children behind the fence." Some hesitated, but the urgency in his voice left no room for argument. Teachers quickly ushered the remaining students inside, locking the gates. The playground that had moments ago echoed with laughter now stood eerily empty, its swings swaying gently in the wind. The man's breathing quickened. He was trapped, and he knew it. His eyes darted toward the street again, calculating escape routes. Daniel's hand hovered over his holster, not wanting to escalate too fast, but unwilling to take chances. "Last warning," Daniel said evenly. Put the bag down and show me your hands. The man shook his head violently, his voice trembling now, though he tried to mask it with anger. You don't understand. I can't let you see inside. That single phrase froze Daniel's blood. I can't let you see inside. Not I don't want to. Not you don't have the right. But I can't. Behind him, Rex barked sharply, the sound exploding like thunder across the tense silence. The German shepherd's body pressed forward, straining against Daniel's grip, his instincts screaming louder than words ever could. Daniels realized the situation had narrowed into a razor's edge. One wrong move, 1 second of hesitation, and the man could bolt or worse. The stranger's hands twitched again against the backpack straps. Daniels shifted his stance, voice cutting through the heavy air with finality. Sir, if you don't drop that bag right now, I will place you under arrest. The man froze, his chest heaving, eyes wild. Around them, the crowd of parents watched in stunned silence, their children clinging desperately to them. The standoff had begun, and somewhere deep inside, Daniels knew whatever was in that bag, Rex already understood. The K9's growls weren't born of fear, but of certainty. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was the edge of something much darker, and it was about to break wide open. The standoff at the school gates stretched into unbearable silence. The stranger's chest rose and fell with ragged breaths. His eyes darted like a cornered animal, scanning for an escape. Parents clung to their children, pressing them further behind the locked gates. Officer Daniels stood his ground, every nerve on high alert, his hand hovering near his holster. Beside him, Rex's growls vibrated through the concrete, deep and guttural, a living warning that no one dared ignore. Daniels spoke slowly, evenly, each word deliberate. Put the bag down, now. The man shook his head violently. You don't understand. I can't. Rex lunged again, snarling, his powerful frame straining against Daniel's hold. The leash quivered like a live wire, taut with the force of the K9's instinct. Daniels felt the tug in his arm, but his eyes never left the man. Rex wasn't wrong. He had never been wrong. Sir, Daniels said firmly, this is your last chance. Either you drop the bag, or I place you under arrest. Decide now. The man's lips moved, mumbling words Daniels couldn't hear, as though whispering to himself. His hands trembled against the backpack straps. Finally, with a sudden burst of motion, he shoved Daniels hard, trying to sidestep him toward the open street. It was the worst mistake he could have made. Rex exploded forward, teeth flashing, tackling the man with bone-crushing force. The stranger crashed onto the pavement, the backpack skidding a few feet away. Screams erupted from the parents behind the gates. The man thrashed, but Rex pinned him down, his teeth gripping the sleeve of the jacket, unyielding. Rex, hold! Daniels barked, rushing forward. The K9 obeyed, growling but keeping the man immobilized. Daniels kicked the backpack closer with his boot before snatching it off the ground. He yanked open the main zipper. What he found inside turned his blood cold. It wasn't books, toys, or even food. Instead, neatly folded maps lay stacked, their surfaces marked with circles and notes. Daniels scanned them quickly: playgrounds, schools, bus routes, even timestamps of dismissal schedules. The meticulous handwriting detailed when children played outside, which streets lacked cameras, which parks had the least foot traffic. It wasn't coincidence. It was surveillance. Daniel's stomach twisted. This wasn't just a man with a strange story. This was someone who had been planning, watching, waiting. He turned the bag over and unzipped a smaller compartment. Inside were several disposable phones, each labeled with sticky notes. Some listed names. Others listed times. One phone's background wallpaper nearly stopped Daniel's heart. It was a photo of a little girl, no older than 8, standing outside a different school several towns away. Daniel slammed the bag shut and snapped his radio to his mouth. "Dispatch, this is Officer Daniels at Brookfield Elementary. I need immediate backup. Suspect detained. Possible trafficking operation. Send units now." The man snarled from the ground, trying to twist free beneath Rex's iron grip. "You don't know what you're doing. You'll ruin everything." His voice cracked, no longer confident, but desperate. "Stay down." Daniels barked, forcing the man's hands behind his back and snapping cuffs over his wrists. The suspect writhed, spitting curses, but Rex's weight and Daniels' grip kept him pinned. Within minutes, sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder until patrol cars skidded to a stop around the school. Officers leapt out, weapons drawn, rushing to secure the scene. Parents shielded their children's eyes, clutching them tightly as the reality of what was unfolding began to sink in. Daniels passed the bag to a fellow officer. "Get this to evidence. Now, you need to see what's inside." The officer's eyes widened as he peeked into the open flap, his face paling. "Good God!" The suspect screamed as two officers hauled him to his feet, Rex snapping at his heels until Daniels commanded him to heel. Even restrained, the man fought wildly, his eyes bloodshot, his voice unhinged. "You think you've stopped something? You haven't stopped anything. You don't know how big this is." The words slithered into Daniel's mind like poison. How big this is. What did he mean? The school principal rushed over, panic etched across her face. "Officer Daniels, what's happening? Who is he? What's going on?" Daniels steadied his voice. "Get all students inside. Lock every door. No one leaves until we've cleared the area." Trust me, this was no misunderstanding. The principal's face drained of color, but she nodded and hurried back toward the building. Teachers scrambled to secure the children, pulling them from windows, turning their once carefree dismissal into a lockdown drill, come-to-life dot as the suspect was shoved into the back of a patrol car. Rex sat beside Daniels, still on high alert, ears forward, chest heaving. Daniels crouched, running a hand along the dog's back. "You knew, didn't you, boy?" "You knew before any of us did." Rex pressed against him, eyes still fixed on the suspect being driven away. Another officer jogged over, holding one of the maps from the bag. His face was grim. "Daniels, you're not going to believe this. These aren't just local schools. Some of these are hours away." He had addresses marked all over the state. Daniel's gut twisted tighter. This wasn't a lone predator. This was a web, a network. And this man was just one thread. The backup team began combing the area, sweeping sidewalks, searching for any accomplices. Parents huddled together, whispering prayers of gratitude that Rex had stopped the man before he had gotten closer to the children. Daniels exhaled slowly, the adrenaline still coursing through him. In his mind, he replayed the moment when he'd almost second-guessed Rex. What if he had dismissed the growl as nothing more than nerves? What if he had let the man pass? The thought chilled him to the bone. "Officer Daniels," one of the detectives said, approaching with the bag's contents spread in a folder. "You realize what you just stopped? This isn't small. This looks like groundwork for coordinated abductions." He wasn't here to see a niece. He was here to execute part of a plan. Daniels glanced toward Rex, who was now sitting calmly by his side, as if the storm inside him had settled. The dog's instincts had peeled back the thin veil of normalcy, revealing the nightmare lurking beneath. The crowd of parents was beginning to settle, though fear lingered in their eyes. A few approached the fence cautiously, one father speaking for all of them. "Officer, that dog saved our kids, didn't he?" Daniels nodded once, his voice steady. "Yes, he did." But inside, Daniels knew this was only the beginning. The discovery inside the backpack had cracked open, something far bigger than anyone imagined. And while the suspect was now in custody, the notes, maps, and phones told a chilling truth. There were more names, more places, more children marked. Rex hadn't just stopped a stranger. He had stopped the first move of a larger, darker game, and the real discovery had only just begun. The suspect sat in the interrogation room, shackled to a steel table, his sweat-soaked shirt clinging to his chest. Harsh fluorescent light buzzed overhead, illuminating every twitch, every bead of perspiration that slid down his temple. Two detectives watched from behind the glass, their arms crossed, jaws tight. Inside, he looked less like the defiant man who had fought against being detained and more like a cornered rat, pacing in his chair, eyes flicking between the camera in the corner and the locked door. Detective Alvarez leaned toward Daniels, who stood silent in the observation room with Rex sitting obediently at his side. "You sure you want to be in here for this?" Daniels didn't take his eyes off the man. "I was there. Rex was there. He tried to walk past us like it was nothing. We almost let him. I need to see how deep this goes." Alvarez studied him for a moment and gave a short nod. "Fair enough." Inside, the lead interrogator, Detective Ramirez, laid a thick folder on the table. She flipped it open with deliberate slowness, sliding the first photo across the steel surface. It was the picture Daniels had seen earlier, the little girl outside another school. "Who is she?" The suspect shifted uncomfortably, but said nothing. His jaw clenched, and he stared down at the floor. Ramirez slid another photo forward. A playground, children laughing in the background, a red circle drawn around the jungle gym. And this location? Still silence. His breathing grew faster. Finally, Ramirez leaned in, her voice sharp as broken glass. "We already have enough to put you away for the rest of your life. Surveillance logs, maps, burned phones. You think we won't connect the dots? Tell us who else is involved, or I swear you'll never see daylight again." The man's lips twisted into a faint smirk. "You think you've won? I'm nothing. Just one piece. Cut me off, and another will replace me." Daniel's stomach churned. That phrase again. Just one piece. Ramirez's fist hit the table. Names. Now, for the first time, the man looked up. His eyes, red-rimmed and wild, met hers. "You wouldn't believe me if I told you." "Try me," Ramirez shot back. The suspect leaned forward, his voice low, almost a whisper. "It's everywhere. Schools, malls, parks. People you trust. They watch. They wait. Parents never see it until it's too late." Daniels felt Rex stiffen beside him, ears flicking at the change in tone. The room suddenly felt smaller, darker. The idea that this wasn't one predator, but a network, burrowed into Daniel's mind like a parasite. The interrogator pressed harder. "Who are they working for? Where's the hub?" But the man only laughed dry, hollow, and chilling. "You'll never find them all." The sound rattled through the observation room, and Daniel's fists clenched at his sides. Rex growled softly, sensing his handler's tension. Moments later, the suspect froze, his laughter cut short by a sudden realization. His eyes flicked toward the observation glass, as though he could see right through it. He leaned closer to the table, whispering words that sent ice through Daniel's veins. "Your dog ruined everything." Rex growled again, deeper this time, a rumble that seemed to vibrate through the walls. At night, Daniels couldn't sleep. The image of the maps spread across the evidence table burned in his mind. Dozens of circles. Dozens of schools. Each one represented children who had no idea how close danger had come. In the precinct's evidence room, officers cataloged the phones one by one, scrolling through texts, contacts, and logs. What they found was worse than anything Daniels had imagined. Each phone contained carefully coded messages lists of meeting places, strange symbols, and occasional photos of children. Cross-referencing the data revealed chilling patterns. Networks spanning multiple states, coordinated handoffs, even scheduled shipments. It wasn't random. It was organized, professional, almost militarized. The realization was suffocating. This wasn't a lone predator. This was a machine. 2 days later, Daniels and Rex accompanied federal agents to a warehouse on the outskirts of town. One of the phones had pinged there repeatedly, the signal consistent with recent activity. The team approached quietly, armed and alert. The warehouse loomed in the distance, its rusted exterior blending into the forgotten industrial district. Daniels tightened his grip on Rex's harness. "Ready, boy?" he whispered. Rex's muscles tensed, his ears locked forward, his body a coiled spring. He didn't need words, he knew. The agents breached the doors, shouting commands as they swept the interior. Dust hung in the air, but amidst the shadows, evidence screamed the truth. Rows of cots lined the walls, blankets scattered across the floor. Children's shoes, tiny, colorful, innocent, were tossed into a corner. In the center, a makeshift table littered with papers, maps, and another stack of disposable phones. Though the place was empty of people, the signs were unmistakable. Children had been here. Recently, Daniel's chest constricted. He picked up a small pink sneaker, no bigger than his hand. "God!" His voice cracked. Rex whined softly, pressing against his leg, as if trying to anchor him. One of the agents cursed under his breath. They cleared out. Must have been tipped off. But Daniels shook his head, eyes narrowing. No, Rex would have caught their trail if they'd just left. They were gone before we even got the call. It hit him like a hammer, a man in custody, the smug smile, the cryptic words. You'll never find them all. He hadn't been afraid of being caught. He had been a decoy. The next week was a blur of raids, briefings, and sleepless nights. Every lead opened another door, another breadcrumb trail that led to an even darker truth. The maps in the backpack had been just the surface. Beneath them stretched a network, so vast it was difficult to grasp. Parents from Brookfield Elementary sent letters, flowers, and thank you cards addressed not to Daniels, but to Rex, the hero dog, they called him on the news. Daniels accepted the gratitude, but inside, he felt no victory. Because for every child saved, there were dozens still at risk. One evening, Daniels stood outside the precinct, watching the sunset bleed into the horizon. Rex sat beside him, head resting against his knee. Daniels ran a hand through the dog's thick fur, his voice low. "You're right, boy. You saw what none of us did. We stopped one. But there are more. Too many." Rex lifted his head, amber eyes catching the fading light. There was no fear in them, only steady resolve. And for the first time in days, Daniels felt a flicker of hope that they weren't finished. Not yet, because the truth was out now. And the fight had only just begun. The story broke like wildfire. Within 24 hours of the arrest at Brookfield Elementary, every news channel in the state ran the footage. A restrained man being shoved into the back of a patrol car, Rex standing like a soldier beside Officer Daniels. Headlines screamed across television screens and front pages. K9 saves dozens of children from possible abduction plot. Hero. Dog exposes nationwide trafficking. Network. Parents call Rex the guardian of Brookfield Elementary. Cameras swarmed the precinct steps. Reporters shouted questions as Daniels walked in and out, Rex always by his side. Microphones thrust forward, desperate for sound bites. "Officer Daniels, how did your K9 know the suspect was dangerous? Do you believe more children were targeted? Is this part of a larger ring?" Daniels kept his answers short, professional. "We followed our training. My partner alerted me. and I trusted him. We're working closely with federal agencies now. The investigation is ongoing. But inside, the weight was heavier than his calm exterior revealed. The public saw Rex as a hero. Parents clung to their children, thanking God for a dog who had barked at the right time. But Daniels knew the darker truth. The man in custody had been a pawn. The real masterminds were still out there, still watching, still waiting. That night, Daniels sat at his kitchen table, his uniform shirt tossed over the back of a chair. The house was quiet, except for the steady rhythm of Rex's breathing as the dog lay curled near his feet. The table was cluttered with files, maps, and images of the evidence pulled from the suspect's bag. He picked up one of the photographs. A girl, maybe 7 years old, grinning with missing front teeth, her backpack slung over her shoulder. The circle drawn around her image made his stomach twist. She had a name, a family. She was more than a face on a page. Daniels rubbed his eyes, exhaustion pulling at him. He hadn't slept properly since the arrest. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw parents screaming, children crying, or that pink sneaker lying abandoned in the warehouse. He whispered into the silence. We stopped one. But how many slipped through? Rex lifted his head, ears twitching at his handler's voice. The dog rose, padding over, and pressed his nose against Daniels' hand. Daniels managed a faint smile, scratching behind his partner's ears. You don't doubt yourself, do you? You just act. Maybe I should take a lesson from you. The following morning, Daniels was summoned to a town hall meeting. The auditorium overflowed with parents, teachers, and concerned citizens. Murmurs buzzed through the crowd until the mayor stepped to the podium. Ladies and gentlemen, I know many of you are frightened after recent events. But thanks to the vigilance of Officer Daniels and his K-9 partner Rex, a potential tragedy was prevented. They are the reason our children are safe today. Applause thundered through the room, parents rising to their feet. Daniels stood awkwardly to the side of the stage, Rex sitting calmly at his heel, tail wagging slightly, as though oblivious to the tension in the air. But when Daniels stepped up to speak, the cheers quieted. Faces turned toward him, hopeful, fearful, demanding answers. He cleared his throat. First, I want to say thank you. Your trust in law enforcement means everything. Rex and I were doing our jobs, nothing more. But I need you to understand something. What happened wasn't random. This wasn't a man who just wandered into town. He had a plan. And we believe others may still be out there. Gasps rippled through the audience. A mother clutched her child tighter. Daniels continued carefully. We're working with federal agencies, and every lead is being pursued. But we can't be everywhere at once. So I'm asking you be vigilant. Report anything unusual. Trust your instincts. It's better to call and be wrong than to stay silent and regret it. A father stood from the back, voice cracking. So what you're saying is, our kids still aren't safe? The question pierced the air like a blade. Daniel's chest tightened. He glanced at Rex, then back at the crowd. I'm saying evil doesn't vanish overnight. But what I can promise you is this. Rex and I, and every officer in this town, will fight with everything we have to keep your children safe. You have my word. The applause that followed was softer, tinged with fear, but it was real. Later that day, Daniels walked through the schoolyard with Principal Harris. The once lively playground was subdued. Children played, but parents lingered nearby, eyes darting at every passing stranger. The innocence of carefree afternoons had been fractured. I've worked here 15 years, Harris whispered. Never once did I think something like this could happen in our town. And yet, it almost did. Daniels nodded grimly. Almost. But it didn't. Remember that. Nearby, a little girl broke away from the swing set and ran toward Rex. She dropped to her knees, wrapping her arms around his neck. Rex licked her cheek, tail thumping. "Mommy says he's the reason I'm safe," she giggled. Daniel's throat tightened. "She's right," he murmured, but the praise came at a cost. Each headline, each parent's gratitude, each reminder of Rex's heroism pressed heavier on Daniel's shoulders. He didn't feel like a hero. He felt like a man who had glimpsed the edge of a storm and knew it was still coming. The FBI briefings confirmed his fears. The suspect had provided little information beyond vague hints. His phones, while damning, only scratched the surface of a larger operation. Every time Daniels thought they were closing in, the trail went cold. One evening after another long shift, Daniels sat in his truck with Rex in the passenger seat. Rain tapped against the windshield. He stared at the precinct doors, unable to move. "Do you think we made a difference?" he asked softly. Rex cocked his head, watching him with steady amber eyes. In that look, Daniels saw the truth. To Rex, there was no question. Saving even one child was everything. Daniels started the engine. "All right, partner. Tomorrow, we keep going. One step at a time." As the weeks passed, the community began to heal. Parents still watched their children more closely. Laughter slowly returned to the playgrounds. Rex became a local celebrity invited to school assemblies. His story shared at safety seminars. To the children, he wasn't just a dog. He was a protector. For Daniels, the recognition was bittersweet. At night, when the noise faded, he still saw the maps. He still thought of the children whose names weren't yet known, whose faces hadn't yet been found. The fight wasn't over, but he wasn't alone. He had Rex, and together, they had become something larger than a man and his dog. They had become a shield. And shields, no matter how battered, never drop. The warehouse raids had yielded scraps of truth, but for weeks, Daniels and Rex worked in the shadows of a puzzle that refused to fit. Maps, phones, empty cots. Each piece whispered of children unseen, yet none revealed where they had gone. The network operated like smoke visible enough to choke you. Impossible to hold. But then came the break. A burner phone, overlooked at first, buzzed one evening in evidence storage. A rookie officer, startled by the sound, rushed it to the task force. The text on the screen was chillingly simple. "Shipment ready. Pick up in 24 hours. Usual place." The usual place turned out to be a rest stop off Interstate 95, a lonely stretch surrounded by woods. Surveillance drones confirmed unusual traffic patterns, vans pulling in at odd hours, drivers meeting briefly before splitting off in different directions. The task force mobilized. This time, Daniels and Rex weren't observers. They were at the center. The night of the operation, rain slicked the asphalt, headlights glistening like cold stars. Officers in unmarked vehicles lined the highway, radios crackling with low voices. Daniel sat in the back of a surveillance van. Rex at his side, the dog's body taut, ears pricked. "Target vehicle approaching," came the whisper through the headset. A white van slowed as it entered the rest stop, pulling into the farthest corner where shadows swallowed the light. A second van rolled in moments later. Two men stepped out, scanning the lot nervously. Daniel's heart pounded. His hand rested on Rex's harness, grounding him. "Easy, boy. Wait for my word." Through binoculars, Daniels caught sight of movement inside the van. Small silhouettes. Tiny faces pressed against the glass. His stomach clenched. "Children. Units hold," the commander ordered. "Wait until the transfer starts. We need them both." But Daniels felt Rex stiffen, a low growl vibrating in his chest. The dog's body shifted, muscles twitching. He wasn't waiting, he knew. Something was about to go wrong. One of the men opened the back of the van, pulling a crying child roughly by the arm. Daniel's vision tunneled. He heard the commander's voice in his ear, telling him to wait, to hold position. But he couldn't. Neither could Rex. Now. Daniels barked, bursting from the van. Rex surged forward like a bullet. Chaos exploded. Floodlights blazed on. Sirens shrieked. Officers swarmed the lot, shouting commands. Rex leapt, jaws locking onto one suspect's arm, dragging him to the ground as he screamed. Daniels charged the other, slamming him against the van before cuffing him hard. Inside, children sobbed, banging on the locked doors. Daniels yanked them open, his chest heaving as the little ones poured out into waiting officers' arms. "Safe now," he whispered, his throat tight as he helped the small boy down. "You're safe." By the end of the night, 12 children were rescued. 12 lives pulled from the jaws of a nightmare. The men were arrested, their burner phones seized, their contacts leading to a string of further raids. But for Daniels, the moment that etched itself into his soul came hours later, when parents began arriving at a makeshift reunification center. A little girl with tangled hair and tear-streaked cheeks spotted her mother across the room. She shrieked, breaking free of the officer holding her, sprinting into her mother's arms. Their sobs filled the hall, raw and UNCO, NTAI, and ABLE, gotta buy. A father fell to his knees as his son clung to him, both trembling uncontrollably. Daniel stood against the wall, watching silently. His throat ached, his eyes burning. Rex sat beside him, tail thumping softly against the floor, as though sensing the relief in the air. Principal Harris appeared at his side, her eyes shining. "You did this," she whispered. Daniels shook his head. "No, he did." He glanced at Rex, who looked up at him with steady amber eyes. The media storm that followed was unlike anything Daniels had ever seen. Headlines proclaimed a victory. K9 and handler rescued 12 children in multi-state bust. News anchors called Rex a national hero. His image plastered across screens and newspapers. At a press conference, the FBI director himself commended Daniels and Rex. Their courage and instincts exposed the network we had been chasing for months. Without them, we might never have found these children. Flashbulbs popped as Daniels stepped to the podium, Rex sitting proudly at his side, a medal already hanging from his collar. Reporters shouted questions, but Daniels ignored them all, placing his hand on Rex's head. "This dog saved lives," he said simply. "That's all that matters." Later, back at Brookfield Elementary, the school hosted a special assembly. Children waved handmade posters. "Thank you, Rex." And "Our hero dog." When Daniels walked Rex onto the stage, the auditorium erupted in cheers. But the moment that broke him came when a little girl from the playground, one who had hugged Rex weeks before, approached the microphone. Her voice trembled, but her words carried. "Rex saved us because he loves us. He's not just a dog. He's our guardian angel." Daniels swallowed hard, blinking against the sting in his eyes. He reached down, scratching Rex behind the ears. "Guess you're promoted, partner," he whispered. That evening, as the sun dipped low, Daniels and Rex sat on the porch of their quiet home. The medals, the applause, the headlines, all of it seemed far away now. Daniels leaned back, letting the silence settle. "We did it, boy. We really did it. We gave those kids a chance." Rex rested his head on Daniels' knee, eyes closing in contentment. For the first time in weeks, Daniels allowed himself to breathe. He knew the fight wasn't over. Evil never vanished completely. But tonight, at least, good had won. And as the stars emerged above, Daniels realized something simple, something Rex had shown him from the start. Sometimes, one bark, one growl, one refusal to let danger pass was enough to change the world. Months passed since that night at the rest stop. The town of Brookfield began to breathe again. Children's laughter once more filled playgrounds, though parents still watched with keener eyes. The scars of fear were slow to fade, but hope had returned, and its shape was a German shepherd with amber eyes. Rex's name became more than local. His story spread across the country, told on evening news, written in national magazines, even trending online with the hashtag #GuardianRex. To some, he was a hero. To others, a symbol that instinct and courage could still pierce the darkest of threats. But for Daniels, Rex was just his partner, his shadow, his lifeline. And though the spotlight shone brightly, Daniels preferred the quiet moments, walking patrol with Rex at dusk, sitting on the porch with him after long days, or watching the dog chase after a stick in the yard like he was just a dog. Because beneath the fame, Rex never changed. He didn't understand medals or headlines. He only understood his duty to protect Dot in Washington. Rex and Daniels were invited to a ceremony at the Capitol. Senators shook their hands, officials praised their service, and children from schools across the state sent letters that were read aloud. One note, scrawled in shaky handwriting, read, "Dear Rex, thank you for barking that day. You saved me and my friends. I want to be brave like you." Daniels felt his throat close as he listened. He glanced down at Rex, who sat calmly, tail wagging, unaware that he had inspired a generation. When Daniels stepped to the microphone, the applause was deafening. He spoke simply, his voice steady despite the emotion stirring inside him. Rex doesn't know he's a hero. He doesn't care about medals or ceremonies. All he cares about is doing his job and protecting those who can't protect themselves. That's what makes him special. And that's what we can all learn from doing the right thing, even when no one is watching. The room fell silent, many wiping tears. Daniels stepped back, one hand resting on Rex's head, grounding himself in the presence of the partner who had changed everything. Back home, the impact deepened. The school board launched new safety initiatives, naming their program, the Rex Protocol, a set of guidelines teaching staff and students to trust instincts, report suspicions, and never dismiss warning signs. Teachers used Rex's story to explain to children that bravery wasn't about size or strength, but about standing firm when something felt wrong. Parents formed community watch groups, working with law enforcement to close blind spots in their neighborhoods. For the first time in years, unity replaced apathy. Fear had woken them up, but hope kept them working. And every year, on the anniversary of the rescue, Brookfield Elementary held Rex Day. Children wore paw print stickers, classrooms made posters, and Rex himself sat proudly on stage while students read essays about heroes. One boy's words echoed louder than most. Rex is proof that even when bad people are hiding, good people and good dogs are watching too. But legacy wasn't only about ceremonies. Quietly, the children rescued that night began to heal. Therapy sessions, patient counselors, and the unconditional love of their families worked to patch wounds that might never fully disappear. Some still woke screaming in the dark. Others clung tighter to their parents at school drop-off. But they were alive. They had futures. One mother stopped Daniels outside a grocery store months later. Tears filled her eyes as she clutched his hand. "My daughter was in that van. She wouldn't be here without you. I can never repay you. But thank you. Thank you for giving me my baby back." Daniels swallowed the lump in his throat, glancing down at Rex. "Don't thank me. Thank him." The woman crouched, wrapping her arms around the dog's neck. Rex licked her cheek gently, as if he understood. Not everyone saw Daniels as untouchable, though. Behind the medals and speeches, the nightmares lingered. Some nights, he woke drenched in sweat, the sound of children crying echoing in his ears. Sometimes, he saw the man in the interrogation room, smiling that hollow smile, whispering, "You'll never find them all." But Rex was always there. A weight at the foot of the bed. A steady presence reminding him he wasn't alone. When Daniels faltered, Rex anchored him back to the ground. And over time, Daniels came to see the truth. Their fight hadn't ended that night. Evil would always lurk, but so would guardians. And as long as Rex stood by his side, Daniels would keep going. Years later, Rex retired. His muzzle had turned gray, his pace slower, but his spirit remained unshaken. At a small ceremony in the precinct, officers lined the hall, saluting as Daniels walked Rex through one last time. "This dog saved more lives than we'll ever know," the chief said, voice thick with emotion. "And his legacy will outlive us all." Daniels knelt beside Rex, unbuckling the service vest that had been his armor for so many years. He whispered into his ear, voice breaking, "You did good, partner. More than good. You changed everything." Rex pressed his head against Daniel's chest, tail thumping softly, as though to say he understood. When Rex passed years later, the town mourned as though they had lost one of their own. Flags flew at half-staff, children placed flowers outside the school, and the mayor declared the day a town-wide day of remembrance. But more than the ceremonies, it was the stories that kept him alive. Children who had once been rescued grew into adults, teachers, doctors, police officers, each carrying a piece of Rex's courage with them. One of the rescued girls, now a young woman, spoke at his memorial. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she said, "I was 7 years old when Rex barked. That sound saved my life. Every day since, I've tried to live in a way that proves his bark wasn't wasted." In the end, Rex's legacy wasn't just about the night he refused to let danger pass. It was about the ripples that spread afterward, the lives saved, the families reunited, the community forever changed, and for Daniels, it was about a bond that could never be replaced. A bond forged not in words, but in trust, loyalty, and the unbreakable instinct of a dog who simply refused to look away. As he stood at Rex's memorial, Daniels whispered into the wind, "You were more than a partner, boy. You were a shield. And because of you, dozens of children had a chance to grow up. That's a legacy no one can take away." The wind carried his words across the field, where children played freely once more, laughter ringing against the sky. And somewhere in the echoes, it almost sounded like a bark that had once saved the world.